What questions are you most often asked when you're interviewing?
Well, I guess the main one is what happened to Coop? Or what began the book? Those are the usual questions,
Yeah.
you know, and I guess I keep saying it was the book about missing, you know, what's missing and in the life for Anna. And so when Coop is missing, he stays missing.
Yeah.
And it's that kind of loss that kind of generates all the emotion in the book. So that's almost a given, I think, for me. And also the idea of how do you kind of how does a book begin in one place and move to another place? But that's always been my tendency anyway. You know, I think the idea of having two landscapes at work, in the English patient it was, you know, the villa in Italy and also the desert. And in that book, actually, an extra one, which was in England when Kip was learning to be a bomb disposal expert.
Yeah.
And I tend to like having different locations that kind of reflect each other, and you know, underline or deepen the previous place in some way.
Yes, I think it was Amos Oz who said that all his fictions, and indeed all great fictions, are about family in some way or another.
Yeah.
Do you agree?
Yeah,
with
I think so. I mean, in an odd way, the other books, like English Patient and Annel's Ghost and In the Skin of a Lion, have dealt with families, but usually families that are, you know, self-made families. The families we make as adults are our wives and our children, and as opposed to the families we're born into. And in this book, it really does kind of deal with family point blank, and even if the family is not a blood-related family, it's a family, and it's how that family governs everyone wherever they are, even what they think about, even what they write about.
The other question of how your books grow, it's always seemed to me that they feel that the sort of process is one of accretion, more like the way coral grows. But actually, I think you have said that it's the opposite thing. It's more like a sculptor who pares away.
Well, it is both things. I think
both,
you know.
yeah.
I mean, I think the way the book, the first one or two drafts grow, the way they grow is through accretion. You know, you have a small moment, you have a small fragment of a situation. You have three characters, and then another character walks in. That complicates the relationship, and then one character moves somewhere else, and we enter that world. And so we're getting these little pods of situation. And then when you finish the book, then in the stage of editing, then it is much more like sculpture, where you kind of look at this thing you've made that's got probably too many arms and too many legs. You have to cut a few away, and maybe cut, you know, too many arms away, because you are kind of trying to make something and sculpt something that's not fully complete. You don't want something that's there 100%, so that the reader then can kind of add to it, you know, which is, I think, a great necessity for a reader. I mean, I think I like the active reader, you know.
I think also, if you are active and you're not, everything isn't laid out for you, you know, with leaving nothing for your own imagination and your own interpretation and your own identification, you know, then actually it goes away. It leaves you more quickly. And the thing about your books, I think, is that they stay with you, not in necessarily detail, because, you know, things come in and go out of your mind. And I often find, well, I have to read your books, or not have to, but I want to read your books many, many times, because there are all these new things in them. But the essence of the book just remains very clearly with the reader if you've participated.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I suppose it's what I learned as a poet, you know, where you have when a poet says everything he has to say, it's deadly. It's like too much of a too verbal guide in an art gallery. You know, you want to kind of enter and kind of.
Yeah.
It's a learning process for the writer, but also a learning process for the reader.
Yeah.
And it's a thrill when you kind of suddenly start making connections that the writer does not tell you about.
That's
But it
right.
does mean you have to read a bit slower than usual.
But it's like, I mean, it is in a way, I think the art gallery thing, and the comparison with art is quite good, because it's the same with art, you know, with non-representational art, with abstract art, with what you might call modern art. You know, the viewer does again participate
Right.
more than if it's, you know, everything is painted there in detail for you.
I remember an art gallery who was saying, in Chicago, saying, all these people rush in to be confused by Jackson Pollock and rush out again. But they want to keep it as just confusion and
That's
nothing
lovely.
else.
Yeah, that's wonderful. If you hadn't been a writer, would you like to imagine yourself being a painter, a jazz musician, or a filmmaker, or something else?
I think I would have wanted to have been, I think a jazz pianist would be my first choice, and in the vein of Fats Waller, probably.
Yes.
And it's not, I'm not a painter, but what I always wanted to do was illustrate. I mean, I think, you know, the kind of art that N.C. Wyeth did for Treasure Island and Kidnapped and books like that.
Oh, yes.
I kind of love that element.
Or a photographer, what about that?
Well, I
You
take
are a
I take a lot of photographs,
Yeah.
but you know, I prefer to take snaps than photographs. But that is a great pleasure in photography for me as well. But it's only because I can't draw. I would much rather be able to draw for a moment. You know.
Well, if you would have been a jazz pianist, I would have liked to have been a jazz singer.
Yes.
So we could have
Yes, we could have done.
made beautiful music.
Made a lot of money.